I would rather be prepared for those things to happen and prepare like they are going to happen than be shocked when they do. We are seeing in my opinion, a contraction of elite people who can afford all-star cheerleading. This is not a place to hide athletes and cheat the system so you can stay in D2 and have elite kids that should be on elite teams, that want to be on elite teams, but you put them on an NA team and compete them NA across the country, but don't report them to USASF. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are talking about the fact that the cheer industry is changing. Now, this is something that has been weighing heavily on my heart. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been traveling around the country teaching camps and just also got done at our Next Gen conference where I got to talk to so many different owners. And it was really great to do. It's great to travel and be in other gyms because I get to be reinvigorated. I get to be around the energy of other gym owners. I get to be around the energy of other kids, but I also get a really unique glimpse at what it's like across the country in different gyms. Now, even though I get to go to a lot of different gyms, I get to go to very few comparatively to how many gyms there are in the United States. But at our Next Gen conference in Dallas, there were almost 400 gym owners and coaches there, and I was able to talk to so many of them. And I think that there is an overall feeling that the industry is changing. Now, we can determine whether or not that is a good thing or a bad thing. I am choosing to be optimistic and feel like this is a good thing in the long run for our industry. The fact is that there is a shift happening in the industry. There's a number of things that are going on. We've obviously seen the various rulings that have caused some changes within varsity in the way that they do things in some of their settlements. We've seen more and more IEPs coming up and springing out of nowhere to offer new events. We've seen different end of season events, and we've seen a diversification of the industry when it comes to competitive cheer over the last couple of years. Really, since COVID, it's started to kind of grow again in there being a lot of different options. We've also seen more and more and more outside providers coming in to offer services to the cheer industry. Now, some of these outside providers I think are absolutely phenomenal, and they are truly trying to solve an issue in the cheer industry. Some, in my opinion, are really just trying to kind of grab more cash and looking at an industry that spends a lot of money and just trying to get some of that money flowing to them. And I can respect both sides. I can respect the hustle of an entrepreneur, but ultimately, I think we need to be looking at solving issues within the industry rather than just continuing to squeeze more revenue out of it. I think we also need to be very, very aware of the fact that all-star competitive cheer feels like it's a little stagnant or shrinking a little bit, especially as we head into an economically challenging time where there are more and more families that are struggling to have disposable income. We are a sport that is geared around disposable income, especially at the elite all-star level where a competitive season is very expensive. Whether you're from the Midwest or the East Coast or West Coast, if you want to compete at certain events, it's the same price wherever you come from. So while I was just in Manila, Arkansas, with my awesome friends at NSF doing a camp, and food in Arkansas is 20% to 30% cheaper than it is where I'm at in Oregon, and gas, man, we looked at those gas prices and we're like, we need to just take this gas station and put it in Oregon, is like $2 a gallon cheaper. Those things are cheaper in those areas, but those areas that people have an expectation of things being within a certain price range, when they go to a NCAA Nationals, their price is the same for NCAA Nationals. So they don't get a like, well, you're from you get the Arkansas rate. So we are seeing a in my opinion, a contraction of elite people who can afford all-star cheerleading. The industry is also changing in a lot of ways that we are starting to see the industry going back to some standards that I didn't really love seeing, where we're starting to see a more transient nature of our elite athletes leaving their homes, going and staying with host families. That was something that we kind of got away from for a few years. And COVID, I think, certainly impacted it. But I really appreciated seeing less and less kiddos kind of throwing their name out there and trying to make big name programs to try and win a world championship at a really young age. Do I fault anyone for doing that? No, I don't. I certainly can understand the allure. I can certainly understand wanting to be on the best program you can, but I do find it really concerning to see 14-year-old athletes moving away from home, living with host families and doing those kind of things. I don't think it's healthy long-term for the home gyms. I don't think it's healthy for the kids. I think there is a potential time and place that makes sense to do and to potentially experiment with. But ultimately, sending your kids away from home at young, impressionable ages, I just don't think is good for them in their long-term growth. And at the end of the day, what we do is just cheerleading. And although it is an amazing sport that has provided tons of opportunities for me, it is only the sport of cheerleading. And I would actually say the same thing if they were playing football. I would say, you guys, it's just football. It's just a sport. It has a short duration of time. Is it important? Yes. Are the relationships you create important? Yes. Are the memories important? Absolutely. Do we provide an amazing service that I think is priceless to our clientele? I 100% do. But can I provide that service without having athletes move away from home, live with host families, go through that whole experience at a young age? Yes, I believe we can. So anyways, that's me soapboxing and kind of rabbit trailing there for a half a second. But the industry is changing because we're starting to see that happening again. So we have a smaller and smaller pool of fish, of people who can afford to do elite level cheerleading that travels and does all of those things. We have a number of different shifts going on. And I think if you've been in the industry long enough, you can feel those shifts are starting to happen. So here is my advice to be prepared, because I think if you are not prepared for the shifts that are going to be coming in the next 2 years, you're going to potentially be left behind. And if you are prepared, you are about to potentially have an amazing opportunity to grow your business and grow your gym and really do some amazing things in kiddos' lives. So number one, now this is going to sound very anti who I am because I'm always talking about pricing and pricing accordingly, is you need to have a lower priced but still profitable option to get people involved in competitive cheer. Now, if you are a gym that only offers elite and prep, and that is what you offer, first off, prep and elite are basically the same thing now. One just competes for one day less. In my opinion, that's what I see in the industry. You need to have additional funnels to get people involved in the sport that are a lower cost option. And I actually think you need to have other things to get people involved in competitive cheer that are a lower priced option that are still competitive. So for us right now, at the moment, we have fundamentals, which is performance-based, novice, which is also performance-based, prep, and elite. And I think we're missing the boat. We need to be adding some sort of programming that is competitive, that is not competitive at the elite level, because it is the cost of competition and the cost of admissions and all of those other things that are really, in my opinion, pricing people out of the sport, the cost of uniforms and all the extra bells and whistles. It's not my tuition. My tuition is reasonable. My tuition, when you factor it out, I think is less than $7 an hour that kids are paying in the gym. It might have gone up a little bit. Okay, my tuition is not that crazy. So it's not tuition that's the problem. It's all of the other things that you have to purchase to participate in the sport of competitive cheer. And that is where I think that we can make some changes. Now, I know some people have done this with stunt. I've mentioned on previous episodes, we've seen a huge growth in the non-affiliated recreational style division. And I think that those are both areas that gyms can look at growing their client base without increasing their elite presence. Now, I'm going to stop for 2 seconds because I know my lovely friends who are in the USASF are like, Dan, please stop telling people to do this. Because what this is not meant to be is a place to hide kids. This is not a place to hide athletes and cheat the system so you can stay in D2 and have elite kids that should be on elite teams, that want to be on elite teams, but you put them on an NA team and compete them NA across the country, but don't report them to USASF. That is not what this is meant for. This is an opportunity to get more kids involved in cheer at a lower price point. So they're not traveling, they're not doing those kind of events. They maybe do one small, drive 3 or 4 hours style travel event a year and otherwise compete locally at like local high school competitions or things like that. There are a number of ways to do it and you have to figure it out for your demographic. But I think everyone needs to be looking at, how do I get involved in this? I've got clients that are getting involved with actually just running the recreational programs in their area, but they run out of their gym. So they actually do go and cheer on football games. They do those things, but those things also run out of their program. It gives them a practice space, which is a challenge for a lot of these NA youth programs. They don't really have anywhere to practice because they're not sponsored by the school. And so they've found ways for things to be mutually beneficial. It continues to grow the sport of cheerleading. It continues to get kids who eventually could afford elite cheer funneling into the sport, and it increases revenue for the programs. So I think there's a lot of ways that you could be strategically attacking this problem by having lower priced, but still profitable. Again, don't forget that, but still profitable options to get people involved in cheer. Number two, the thing that is changing in the industry is people's expectations for the amount of time that they contribute to something to how quickly the outcome comes to them. Their expectations are increasing. So because of the Amazon Prime culture, Netflix, all of that, people are impatient. They want things quickly. And unfortunately, we are in an industry, we are in a sport that requires lots and lots and lots of time to get better at. It just doesn't happen overnight. But we are seeing more and more and more athletes and parents and even gyms who are like, we opened last year and we haven't won Summit yet. We're failing. No, you opened last year. Yes, there's a couple gyms that go and open in their first year, they go win worlds. But most of the time, those gyms are offshoots of another program that consolidate into another location. It's pretty rare for people to just open a gym and immediately start winning. That's like a totally very, very unlikely scenario. So we want to make sure that we are doing things to make people feel the progression, because we as a coach, we as a gym owner know that that athlete who started training with us 2 months ago has gotten a lot better. Even though they haven't seen the direct result, they don't have that handspring yet. They don't have that walkover perfect. They don't have those things perfect. They've grown a lot. And if we don't have small incremental benchmarks, especially for our beginners, we're going to be a lot less likely to retain those kids in the sport, because we're relying on them to believe in the process and enjoy the process of working really, really hard to get an accomplishment. So we've got to have strategies to reduce the speed to outcome for our clients, as well as celebrate small victories throughout, right? Think of it like how video games have added all these different achievements. You've played this many hours, you get an achievement. You completed this level, you have an achievement trophy. It gives people these little attaboys as they're working their way through something that can take a lot of time. Number three, this is kind of one of the shifts or challenges I see, is that the industry as a whole is afraid of making a change because we're afraid of impacting the status quo of our current clients. And I find myself in this same mode where there are certain things that I know might be better for my program in the long run, but I know that initially making that shift is going to make people really, really unhappy because it's not what they know. And what we do know is that people don't like change. Even if change is good, oftentimes people are very resistant to it unless it is something that they sought out and are implementing. So when a change comes from outside, people become very, very resistant to it. So the strategy for this is to soft introduce things that you think are important changes to your program. So whether it be going to a different style of competition or adding another piece of programming, you start soft, you open it up with like, hey, we're going to offer this opportunity for people to participate in our stunt programming. Stunt's another great diversified program that you can have. And you just open it up. You don't push people that way, even though you might be like, hey, my whole program needs to go to stunt. It's just the right way. It's cheaper. It's more affordable, better season, gives people time off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. you may not be ready to pull that trigger because you know you'll lose people. But if you can introduce it, get some people who are willing to check it out, try it out on board, and then as they have an amazing experience, they recommend it to everyone else. They're like, oh my gosh, this is the deal. You got to do it. You've now got buy-in from people where they are now choosing to go the route of change. Now, we as an industry don't have that luxury completely, because the reality is things like the economy and things like the world are not fully in our control. So we have to start pivoting and preparing early. And so I want everyone to just continue to be open-minded. That's what I'm really trying to remind myself to do, is just be open-minded and realize that change is not always a bad thing. Oftentimes it's a really, really good thing. So embrace that change. What I don't want to be is I don't want to be the person who sat back when the internet first started and was like, I don't need that stuff. I've got my business information in the phone book. I don't need a website. Or back when Facebook marketing started, the people who were poised and ready to embrace that change and get that really high ROI on super amazing marketing, get in front of tons of eyeballs for super cheap, those people who were poised and ready, they crushed it. The people who were like, ignored it, were like, oh, it's a flash in the pan. It's stupid. I don't need to be ready for that. I don't need to engage in that. Those people got left behind. I think that we need to be really, really ready for that by having some of the things that I already mentioned in place, so we don't get left behind with the coming tectonic shifts that are happening in the industry. The reality is, if you want to survive more than 10 years in business, you need to be capable of pivoting. Some of those things you're not going to see coming. None of us saw COVID coming. We never had any idea what was going to happen. Those of us who survived it, who pivoted, who made things work, or who came back from it are, I think, more mentally capable of realizing, okay, this is a situation, but I can pivot, I can adjust, I can do this. You have to be prepared for that. Now, some of the things you're going to see coming, and I think some of the things we've talked about on this episode are the things that you can see coming. They're there. They're out there. You can see them in the distance. I would rather be prepared for those things to happen and prepare like they are going to happen than be shocked when they do. Because the reality is none of the things I'm talking about are things that are going to make your business worse. I'm not suggesting you hoard money or close your doors or cancel programming. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being diversified. I'm talking about being capable of weathering the storm. I'm talking about creating more low barrier offers, reducing friction to get people involved in the sport, because ultimately getting more and more people involved in our sport is better for our sport as a whole. And then you will be less likely to be left behind if change happens. As you leave the episode, the biggest things I want you to do is I want you to sit down and do a SWOT assessment, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I want you to start building your strategic programming so you can look at what diverse programming or what opportunities make sense for you. If you've never done a SWOT assessment or you don't know how to set strategic priorities, please reach out to the Next Gen Academy. We have a few more spots. I think we have about 5 more spots left to join the Academy at this moment. We'll be opening up some more later in the year, but I think we only have 5 left to join probably before September. So if you've been thinking about it, if you've been contemplating joining the Academy and you need help doing a strategic priority or a SWOT assessment, then get in the Academy, get with a coach. We can walk you through it and we can help you be prepared for the coming changes. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.